Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. This for UFC 291. Producer Megan is on the sticks. The man, the myth, the loser of last week's shoey bet, Cody Saftic, is on the line. I told you, man. Irish people in England, they're not getting any breaks. History would dictate the Irish are not getting any breaks. That being said, Bruno Brazil won that fight pretty fair and square. I had Davy Grant by decision. I was just like, I think he actually won. Plus, we're in England. I felt like I was going to get that decision and didn't. So there was really no home cooking to be had over in the UK last week.
Yeah, I'm going to completely agree. So when we broke down the Davy Grant fight too, I picked against him under the belief that Davy just doesn't really go for it enough. You know, his output's just a little bit too low. And I thought that he was going to get outworked. It was completely the polar opposite. His opponent is running away the entire time. Davy Grant is storming forward, trying to chuck bombs. He's probably up 2-0 going into the third. It might be 1-1. Like, he landed him in the second, but, you know, the damaging blows were done against him. His nose is bleeding. And then the third round, I think he does enough to win that. So, like, a bad judge gives it 30-27. Even a good judge gives it 30-27. And then, you know, maybe worst case, a 29-28. But no, Davy Grant loses. So, Dems to breaks. I didn't have him, but it's like I'm on the other side of the equation many times. Mama B, Shannon O'Bannon, not one of those situations. Lost the first round clean. Second round, winning. Good argument there, but then gives up the takedown with like 90 seconds left. So that seals it for Bruno Brazil. And then the third round, Mama B wins, sure. Too little, too late. Her first loss. And yeah, shame on me for going for it. Last weekend would have been real good. Unfortunately, Molly McCann, second line. What am I thinking? So if there's big plus money to be had on women's MMA, Pat system just crushes me every time. I tried to go for it with one of those little plus 120s on Shayna O'Bannon. Wasn't to be had. So yeah, no, I lost the shoey bet last week. I don't know if you want to have one this week, but hopefully if we do have one, it's at least a better effort on my part.
We'll see. We'll see if something pops up. Yeah, I had Davy Grant plus 370 by decision. It was like one of those situations where it's like, great bet, just like wrong results. It's like, what are you supposed to do? I ended up profiting a little bit, but like that decision bet would have really made my night. Ooh, what's that?
Same dirty boot.
A light beer because they ain't paying us nothing. That is a dirty boot. I like how we went polar opposite ways on this. I'm old and washed and decrepit. It's like I can't risk drinking out of like the dirty shoe anymore.
Oh,
you know?
My God, what was I thinking?
Oh!
Do you see this? That's nasty. That's nasty.
Hold it up to the camera. Is it gone?
You know what? No, yeah, I chucked it.
Is that a horsehair?
No, I just think it's like fiber from the boot. Instead of like boots worn out, it's got like fibers in it.
There was like a little
I'm glad it's fiber instead of hair, but
hey.
I'm just waiting for the foam to die out. See, it's got a foamy pore there.
How did that get worse than the last one?
All right. You can kill the dead space here while I walk the walk of shame.
Oh, we're just watching. What a unit. What a unit. This guy, a man of his word, absolutely crushes it. It's warm. It's warm in the GTA right now, Greater Toronto area. So Cody looks thirsty.
Ugh. Shitty face, not because of the beer. Shitty face because there was definitely something dirty in that boot.
Thoughts?
We've definitely gone opposite ways on the shoey bet, but again, to me, it's a punishment, and I'm going to make a concentrated effort here to not take stupid shoey bets like Sean O'Bannon. So you have the right to say no, people. And Paul, if you try to get me on one of these greasy ones again, I may consider saying no.
Fair. Maybe we won't end up with one on this one. Maybe we will. There's not too many fights.
We're passionate on both sides. I wasn't passionate. I just thought plus 120, greasy fight. I'm going to take the underdog. Mm-hmm. You know what it was? A close fight that, the right fighter won. So don't get me wrong. But yeah, I would take the plus. If they were to fight again a month from now, like, yeah, just shore up your takedown defense a little bit, put the pressure on her and beat her. Like, winnable fight, plus money. Sure, not a bad idea, but like, shoey bet, man? Like, why do you do that to yourself? It's gross. You might be sitting at home just thinking like, it's like chugging a beer. Not like chugging a beer. It was gross. Maybe to Paul, because he's got some sweet little boot that's like clean. He probably cleans it after every show, but
rinse it out with water.
To me, it's a lesson. It's a lesson. And although I've done like 10 shoeies this season, 12 shoeies this season, I think I learned my lesson this time, but we will see.
We will see. I mean, in fairness, it's like the week before you took Norma Dumont. I wasn't very high on Chelsea Chandler at all. And
why are we taking a shoey bet on WMMA? God damn.
Because it stops us from like investing like serious money into it. That's like my general train of thought. That being said, I'm more apt to take shoey bets since I got my little to the moon little boots there.
Right.
Delicious. Drink out of those all day, any day. All right, let's get into the main event. We've got the BMF title on the line with Dustin Poirier taking on Justin Gaethje, minus 150 for Poirier, plus 130 for Justin Gaethje. I thought they were kind of done with the BMF title. I thought it was like a one-time thing. In fairness, both of these guys are BMFs, badass MFs, for those who don't know what it actually means. Can't say it on TV because Cody would have to bleep it on his
bad
end.
Mother effer.
Both of these guys have obviously fought each other. They're both fan favorites. They come for action every single time. The previous time that they fought each other, Justin Gaethje had a ton of success with the leg kicks. You got Dustin Poirier kind of like hobbling around. And then as the fight kind of wore on, Dustin fights through what looks like a very, very painful legs, is able to put Justin Gaethje away. I mean, this was like closer to a pick 'em. People have jumped on Poirier. And I side with the Poirier side. One, because obviously he won before. But two, it's like, if I actually think about it, and I was wrong, I bet Yanel Ashmo's, last week. And Chris Duncan, if you watch the countdown show, Chris Duncan and Grant Dawson are like two guys that are featured in the training videos with Dustin Poirier here. Both of those guys, I would argue, have just turned in their best performances by a mile in their last two fights. Like, I was pretty impressed with what Duncan did. But Yanel Ashmo's was, super tough. Fought his way to a decision, but it wasn't remotely close. I was definitely wrong. Egg on my face on that one. But it leads me to believe that like some good things are going on right now at ATT. There's always good things going on at ATT. It's such a massive gym, but his main training partners have come out the last couple weeks and put on career best performances. I'm going to side with Dustin Poirier, but like this fight, we've already seen it. It already kind of plays out like absolute chaos. We're not going to be shocked if either side wins here. I don't think I'm going to have a pre-bet at least, on the main event here. Poirier will be the pick. What about you?
Yeah, I'm having conflicted ideas as well. If you watch back in the first fight, sure, Justin Gaethje has all those leg kicks, but Dustin Poirier just boxes his face off. Like, his combinations are much better. His technical boxing is much better. It's a 5-round fight. Gaethje breaks everybody down the stretch, and it's like, no, not to be had. Like, Dustin Poirier bucks up, knocks him out in the 4th round. Again, it looked like there was a good technical advantage there. Gaethje took an absolute thrashing. And Poirier goes on to challenge for the title and fight Conor McGregor and get kind of those big money fights. And Gaethje's just been flying under the radar. Had some nice wins, but has kind of been flying under the radar. They're both 34 years old now. So again, it's like, who's made the improvements since 2018, 2019? Who's kind of stepped up and made those improvements? And I don't know, they both have. Like, Poirier to me seems like he only wants the big fight. He knows that every time he fights, it's a train wreck. It doesn't matter outside of McGregor, I guess, but every time he fights, he accrues a lot of damage. Even his fight with Dan Hooker, you watch those early rounds, he completely gets beat up. He's a guy that's going to take that beating and give it right back. So as such, he's trying to fight once a year. Gaethje, meanwhile, he's the same way. He's got that Homer Simpson effect. He takes that early damage and then just kind of breaks you down, slows you down, brings you to his level, and then overwhelms you because he's got superior durability and a better chin. It normally works. It didn't work the first time, but it would be the same game plan. Both guys kind of are not at different spots in their career, but they are. Like, at 34, do you want to fight for a title again, or are you just looking for those one big spots, those one big paydays, the big mega fights? So I feel like Gaethje's more willing to invest a few more big highlight fights and then get that title shot, whereas Poirier is going through some type of motion. It's a dog or pass to me. You can make a very good argument for both sides, and I'm leaning towards what's the plus money. When I look at Poirier in the fights since Justin Gaethje, a lot of it's just early, right? He's getting these guys out of there early. Takes a whole lot of damage, don't get me wrong. Took a ton of damage against Dan Hooker, went a little bit later. 2 fights against McGregor, both done early. This fight with Charles Oliveira starts off well, hurts Charles early. He's boxing Charles up, and then Charles makes that comeback, kind of fades him out a little bit, hurts him, takes his back, ends up submitting him. This fight with Michael Chandler, it's a barn burner of a fight. It's a good fight. Takes a lot of damage in that fight. This fight with Gaethje, gonna take a whole lot of damage again. Can he go 4? Can he go 5? He did it the last time. Could you go in there knowing I'm gonna come out of this and go straight to the hospital? So is he up for it? Probably. It's the legendary Dustin Poirier, but I don't know if his body's willing to go through it. Gaethje, meanwhile, that Fiziev fight to me is what kind of the reason I'm going to end up going with him here. He gives up a lot of the same things. He gives up the athleticism. He gives up the speed. He gives up probably the striking. Early against Fiziev, he just can't catch him. First round from Rafael Fiziev, nasty. Beats on Gaethje. Second round, a lot more close and competitive. A lot of people score the fight for Fiziev, that second round. But Justin Gaethje works his way back into it. And then the third round, you see a world-class talent, a world-class striker, a guy that had all these advantages early, fading. A 5-round fight, Gaethje probably takes him out of there. I think that's what's going to happen here against Poirier. First 2-3 rounds, going to be subjective, going to be close. Both guys are going to take a beating. 4-5, I know that's where he lost last time. But 4-5, I think he's going to have a little bit more. Dig deeper just a little bit. And I know exactly what you're saying. American Top Team got amazing things going on right now. Chris Duncan looked career best. Grant Dawson, of course, looked career best. But at the same time, they got something nasty going over there in Colorado. They got Kamaru Usman. They got Justin Gaethje. Chape Mariscal takes a fight against my boy Trevor Peek. No way no one's going to let Trevor Peek bomb on them like that. And no way that someone's going to be able to let Trevor Peek bomb on like that for 3 rounds. He's coming out of Gaethje's camp. All these guys recently, you look at the record, guys that are training with Justin Gaethje, it's the same thing. It's positive because if you could hang with Justin Gaethje in the gym, you're probably going to be all right in a fist fight at a lower level. So it's total dogger pass. I think both guys are world class. Both guys are future Hall of Famers. Both guys are all action. The last time they fought, it was an instant thriller. It was a fight of the night. It was a fight of the year candidate. This one will probably be no less, no different, but it's going to be a crazy fight. And in these crazy fights with tons of variables, probably feel better knowing I got a plus money ticket. So I'm going to end up going with Justin Gaethje.
Fair enough. I will not be fighting you too much or offering shoey bets on that fight. Moving on down, we've got Jan Blachowicz taking on Alex Pereira. -120 for Blachowicz, +100 for Pereira. Pretty much a straight pick 'em. I mean, it's not rocket science. This fight really seems to come down to the takedowns for the most part. Sure, Jan could land a big shot on the feet, but it's like, does he really want to hang out at range with Pereira? I know Pereira's moving up from 185 to 205, but it's like, he was enormous at 185 pounds. 205 should not be a problem for him. He's big, long, and he's got world-class kickboxing. Jan's going to have to shoot for takedowns early and often. On Prize Picks, don't mind the over 2 takedowns. I think there's a high likelihood that kind of pushes maybe. But I think Pereira's shown enough to us that, like, takedown defense is pretty mediocre. I'm sure he's working on it with Glover every single day, but how much better does it get? He had like Sean Strickland coming in for this camp. It's like Strickland's not really, mimicking Jan Blachowicz all that much for you. I'm leaning towards Jan, who's going to be so outclassed, way too slow on the feet. Just because, like, looking at the Jan fight when he took on Israel Adesanya, that's like early on, Adesanya's landing some strikes, and then once Jan was able to use that size and strength, take him down and control him, he swept the last 3 rounds of that fight. This is a 3-round fight, so maybe that makes it a little bit trickier for him. He's going to have to get on that wrestling, literally from the hop. But we haven't seen enough from Pereira's grappling to... I think if he gets taken down, he's probably not getting up for the rest of the round. So Blachowicz will be the pick. I haven't bet it, though. What's your take here?
Yeah, I got to go the other side. Again, the plus money is just a little too tempting, and it's basically an even money fight. I get that. But again, I think both guys got a lot of merit. On one hand, you think Jan Blachowicz might be able to take him down and out-grapple him. On the other hand, if it stays standing, I think we can all agree Alex Pereira is a premium kickboxer at 185 pounds or 205 pounds. He competed at Glory at 205 pounds as well and challenged for the title there. So I think if it stays standing, Alex Pereira hasn't beat. If Jan Blachowicz can take him down, Yeah, you're probably right. Here's my thing, right? So a little bit of ageism. Jan Blachowicz is 40 years old, but also, what would lead us to believe that Jan Blachowicz is actually a wrestler? It's that fight with Israel Adesanya. He loses the first 2 rounds. He takes him down 3 times in the course of 3, 4, 5, and ends up winning a decision. Funny to note, of his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, of his last 9 fights over the last 5 years, that's actually the only guy he's taken down in the UFC. Not a wrestler. Not a wrestler. He's kicking like a 53% takedown accuracy, but beyond that, he's taken 1 of his last 9 opponents down in the UFC. That being Israel Adesanya, also a kickboxer, and probably a smaller man than Alex Pereira, but all the same. So just to think that he's got some great wrestling advantage, like everyone keeps drumming up this fact that like he's got some great wrestling advantage. I don't know about that, right? He's a better grappler. BJJ black belt gets on top of you, probably going to be a problem. But again, he's not some like high level wrestler with effective takedowns in most of his fights. He mostly fights at a super slow ass, lethargic pace from the outside and waits for his openings, finds counters, which is a terrible way to fight Alex Pereira. So I think there's a lot of like from Alex Pereira in that regard. Then you look at the fact that Pereira, he's not really fighting a whole lot of wrestlers in the UFC, so hard to gauge how good his wrestling could be. But yeah, I just think being in the gym with Glover Teixeira is huge. Glover Teixeira is not only a better grappler than Jan Blachowicz, but he's wrestling. Like, it's proven at a high level. He's taken down a lot of good guys. He's a much more effective wrestler. Every Glover fight features him taking down his opponents for the most part. Whereas Jan, again, that's not exactly him. So I think he'll be well equipped. And then this is where the ageism comes in for Jan Blachowicz. You look at his run, and his run includes a win over a middleweight Luke Rockhold, right, who never did nothing at 205. He just had 1 fight and got destroyed, and that's the tail end of his career. A fight with a 85er Jacare, again, that moved up to 205 at the tail end of his career. Corey Anderson, who then got bounced to Bellator. Dominic Reyes, arguably beat John Jones, and then went on a tail swing. And then that 1 big win over Izzy. But look at the 3 fights since then. Against Glover, his neck's compromised. Like right from the get-go, he's moving slow. Glover takes him down, puts him in a neck crank. You can tell the neck crank's getting to him in the first round. In the second round, the second that Glover puts his arm around his neck for that rear naked, he taps. He's compromised. His 2 fights since then, he looks awful against Alexander Rakic. Lands 31 significant strikes through almost 3 rounds, is probably losing on the scorecards, and Rakic breaks his leg. Terrible performance. But Rakic breaks his leg, so he gets a win out of it. Then he fights Magomed Ankalaev. Again, terrible fight. He's slow to the outside, scored no takedowns, but it's Ankalaev, so you can't fault him there. But again, low output, stays to the outside, ends up getting a draw out of it. Did better than most people expected him to do. But I just can't get the feeling that a good, competent striker with better volume, better technique, better power, chews him up from the outside, if he doesn't get his takedowns going, which everyone's assuming he will, I don't know about that, man. And at 40, I think his body is very much compromised. So give me the 36-year-old Alex Pereira, who hopefully has shored up his takedown defense just to keep this thing standing and maul him.
I mean, Pereira was taken down by such wrestling luminaries as Andreas Michailidis twice, Bruno Silva twice, and Israel Adesanya's lone career takedown is in, their first fight against each other. So
right, and all 3 of those fights he won by knockout. For the record.
I mean, yeah. So we can't be comparing Silva and Michailidis to a guy who used to hold the belt at 205 pounds. I don't know.
But imagine your whole life's kickboxing. You're 34 years old. You've kickboxed your entire life. Now you make your UFC debut. The guy just clings on to you. It's your debut. And he takes it down twice. Second fight in the UFC, he gets taken down twice. First fight with Adesanya, he assumes it's just going to be a kickboxing match against a kickboxer. Adesanya mixes in a takedown. That's fine and good, but now he's had like 2.5 years to work on takedown defense. And every camp, I would imagine, would be takedown defense, knowing that they're going to want to take you down. And then, I don't know. Most guys psychologically, how do you come back from a knockout loss? But because he's had a long history of kickboxing, these guys kind of just tend to shake it off a lot better. And what's Jan got? The body kick? Does he zap him with a liver kick? Like, probably not. Does he catch him with a shot standing? Yeah, it's MMA, maybe. Probably not. If he gets Adesanya again, like that rematch, like just has him hurt and just walks into a counter shot, like good on Jan. But for slight underdog, I'll go with Pereira.
Sounds like this is our shoey bet this week.
I'll take a shoey bet on this one.
All right, Gideon.
I will, with some confidence, because I think this is good value.
All right. Move on down. We've got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Michel Pereira, minus 160 for Wonderboy, plus 140 for Michel. Michel Pereira, 4 straight decision fights. Crazy.
Oh,
I mean, it turned out it helped him in his career, but it's like, before he started acting a little bit more composed in there, everybody on social media, on Twitter was, oh, this guy's a goof. Oh, he should be cut. This guy has no talent, yada, yada, yada. And then, he all of a sudden you're kind of like, wait a second. I mean, that's what I've always thought of him. I was just like, this guy's got tons of talent. He likes to mess around a whole bunch, do like spinning helicopter kicks and stuff like that. And the fans didn't seem to want it. But it's like, he's shown that he's like a pretty good all-around mixed martial arts. He's got a little bit of a submission game. Obviously, his striking is solid. He gets hit with a lot of shots. Like, obviously, against Santiago Ponzinibbio last time out, got hit 105 times. On Prize Picks, over 72.5 for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is what I like, and how I kind of think this fight plays out is Wonderboy outpoints him, wins a decision, and both guys get 75 to 100 significant strikes type of thing. I expect this to go the full 3 rounds. And Prize Pick 72.5, promo code DOP. I think that's the side I like. Stephen Wonderboy by decision is my official pick for it. I just think the volume and the spatial awareness that Wonderboy is able to put up there, it's going to be too much for my boy Pereira. I mean, hopefully, if he loses this, hopefully they give him some cans so he can do some crazy stuff in the octagon. Because I miss crazy Michel Pereira. I never really thought of him as like a guy who's going to like win a title in this sport. I think of him as an entertainer. And they've kind of robbed that. I blame all the fans for talking smack about him, for removing that aspect of his game from my television screen. But yeah, Wonderboy by decision for me. What about you?
So I want to piggyback on that. Fight gets announced, I'm on that 100%. Like, again, without looking into it too far deep, what we know about both guys, yeah, I think Wonderboy is just a much better striker. He doesn't have to rely on those flying knees or running off the cage or doing some backflip. Like, he's using actual proven techniques that have worked for hundreds of years, right? Like, it's karate, sure, but it's patented down, man. He knows exactly what he wants to use. He knows exactly what weapons are at his disposal. Footwork's much better, even though I'm an ageist and he's getting older. That footwork and that speed has just kind of always been there. Chin, a little bit suspect. He's been dropped many times throughout the course of his career. He's been knocked out by a lightweight Anthony Pettis. He got dropped by Tyron Woodley both times he fought him. Maybe not so much the second time. The first time, he got dropped pretty hard against Tyron Woodley. There's moments in his career where he's getting backed up and he's getting hit, and you wonder maybe an explosive guy like Pereira might be able to catch him. But as far as striking goes, yeah, no, I think Wonderboy is just leaps and bounds ahead of him, even at his current status and his current age. Here's the thing that I will present to you, though. With Pereira, yeah, those days of being super exciting, gone. And I don't think you can just match him up with bums or all-action guys and get it to come back. It's just gone. There's something missing. Look at his last 4 wins, right? Or his last 3 wins. Santiago Ponzinibbio knocked out in his last fight with Kevin Holland. Andre Fiallo currently on a 3-fight losing streak, knocked out in all 3 of those fights. Nico Price ends up losing his last 2 fights, both by knockout, one to Phil Rowe and one to Robbie Lawler in 38 seconds. Like, none of these guys have taken a punch in their fights after Michel Pereira. And that's not him breaking the chins for the rest of the guys. That's just like he's missing something. That explosiveness, that power, it's not quite there anymore. He'll throw a couple crazy techniques here and there, but either guys see it coming or he's just not fully committing. What he is doing, though, is he's wrestling a whole lot more. He's taken down 4 of his last 5 opponents. Took down Chaos Williams twice, Zelima Madaev, Nico Price 3 times, Andre Fiallo. And his last time out against Santiago Ponzinibbio didn't take him down, but for the record, never even attempted one single takedown in that fight. 4 straight fights prior to that, at least 1 takedown completed. That's the way to fight Wonderboy. You don't want to stand at range with him. Nobody that stands at range with him ever does good. Yeah, maybe you land some crazy technique, which he's capable of doing, doesn't do it as much anymore. Maybe. But the way to beat Wonderboy is to take him down. You see the incredible success that Gilbert Burns had. You see the incredible success that Bilal Muhammad had. Is Michel Pereira either of those guys? Not by a landslide. Not by a landslide. But what he does have is that he's very fast. And you know when he does all that boogie shit, and he shoots to the left and he shoots to the right, and then he flies through the air like an eagle, like he's good at trapping you up. And I think that he would be good enough to just move around Wonderboy, get him to the base of the cage, and then shoot in and overpower him. He is a very physically strong guy. He cuts a ton of weight to get down, and he's only 29 years old, so it's not crazy to think that he's actually making improvements to his game and could come out as a better version of himself. There's not quite enough underdog money on him for me to take it, so I feel like dogs in the first 2 fights, I am going to go with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. But I'm looking at this thing from a live betting standpoint. If Wonderboy outclasses him easy on the feet in the first round, that's likely what's going to happen throughout the rest of the fight. If he takes down Wonderboy right off the get-go, Wonderboy's got not a great get-up game, not an ability to get back up to his feet. Like, he's going to just lose time on the clock. And then you got to rely on good judges. And we're in Utah, where you're allowed to have up to 6 wives. So, like, good choices are maybe not always their forte. I don't know. Just saying. This is a live underdog. Just don't know if I'm going to personally get there myself.
Yeah, I would. Apparently, I like on the embedded or whatever. He's been there for like 2 weeks to acclimatize. Michel Pereira, that is. So that's good in his corner as well, because the cardio hasn't been horrible. He's been able to go to decision in these fights, but it's like he looks a lot slower in round 3 than he does in obviously early on in his fights.
The Nico Price fight was god awful the longer it went, but
exactly. So him at altitude is a little bit troublesome for sure. But at least he's been there for 2 weeks. Moving on down, we got Bobby Green taking on Tony Ferguson. Minus 400 for Bobby Green, plus 300 for Ferguson. You know me. Usually I like backing underdogs. Bobby Green's always kind of been my guy because he's usually an underdog. This line was kind of startling when I kind of first looked at it, but you go back and you watch Tony Ferguson against Nate Diaz, and frankly, I think Nate Diaz is super, super washed. Like, who knows if he's even going to be competitive in his upcoming boxing match, that type of thing. Like,
against Jake Paul.
Exactly. And it's I don't know, man. Like, watching that fight, maybe I'm just sour grapes or whatever, but I was on Tony Ferguson. I thought he was a great bet in that spot. And it's he just looked broken. And just everyone kind of thinks back to 2019 when he's on this massive winning streak and he was supposed to fight Khabib. And obviously that fight never happens. But it's since then, he took a life-changing beating against Justin Gaethje. That kind of absolutely ruined him. Was able to go to the decision against Charles Oliveira, which, his jiu-jitsu historically, up until the most recent, Diaz fight, was pretty elite. So he was able to kind of stay out of trouble, but got taken down constantly. Beneil Darrius, same type of thing. And he takes another absolute drubbing, taking that kick to the face against Michael Chandler. It's the guy's taking so much damage at this point. I think he's damaged goods. I like Bobby Green. One of the sites that I bet at had a Bobby Green and over 1.5 rounds at minus 132. That's how I got my exposure to this. Maybe Tony falls off of a cliff late in the fight. Bobby Green's historically a decision machine. Throws out a lot of volume. I think these guys kind of just trade at range, but I can't back Ferguson even at plus 300. It seems kind of crazy, but it's I really think he's on his way out the door. What's your take here?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I do hate to go back in retrospect and sometimes you shit on a guy's record, but Tony Ferguson's one of those guys. I'm not going to compare him, but I will. It's like a Hoist Gracie, right? There was a time where his skill set and what he did was badass, and it beat guys, and it worked, and it was very effective. And then 10 years later, when you look back, it's well, who did Hoist Gracie really beat, right? But you parade him against that next generation. Not saying Bobby Green is much younger than him. It's just that next generation of skill and what these guys are doing in the gym, and it's not comparable. Hoist Gracie ends up fighting Matt Hughes a decade over his prime and just gets mauled on. Tony's much of the same. His wins haven't particularly aged all that well. Remember that Edson Barboza fight? He took a beating. Comes back, beats Edson Barboza. Dope. Blood everywhere. Darce choke. Nasty little submission win for Tony Ferguson. And he's taking a beating in that fight, Paul. But he comes back and he wins. Barbosa ended up just being a gatekeeper of the division. Then he fights Lando Venata. Oh, he took a beating, Paul. He got dropped twice. Spinning back fist folds him over. Yet Lando wasn't even a gatekeeper. Lando went on to pretty much nothing, never cracked the top 20 of the division. Kind of just one of those fly-by-night guys within the division. He's fight with Kevin Lee. Oh, Kevin Lee in the first round, full mounts him. Mauls on him. Good thing Kevin Lee has no cardio and had staph infection for that fight because Tony looked in a bad spot early. Kevin goes on to pretty much nothing afterwards. The Anthony Pettis fight. Anthony Pettis floors him, Paul. He is in all types of shit. Anthony Pettis breaks his hand in the second round, and Duke Rufus throws in the towel. The later it goes, whatever. He's going to beat him down the stretch, I'm sure. But none of those wins did he ever look really all that good. None of those wins was it ever just a clean Tony Ferguson win. It was he took a drubbing, but was able to get back up and stick with it. And then as a result, through his personal life, it's like, he's dealt with all types of mental health issues. Now you're back in the gym. You're a little bit older. Every time you fight, it's just another colossal amount of compounded injuries. And then back at it again. And then you've got personal troubles. And then he's fighting with people in the media. And then all of his interviews seem super weird. But they just keep booking him another fight. And the results aren't there anymore, man. The beating he took against Gaethje, life-changing. The loss against Charles Oliveira, he just got out-grappled. He got taken down and got out-grappled. But it proved... People were like, man, he can hang with Khabib. Triangle choke. Great off his back. Wicked submissions. Might find a neck. It's like, are you kidding me? No takedown defense. He's scored one takedown in the UFC in the last 8 years. And it was against Nate Diaz in his last fight. That's his lone takedown in the last 8 years in the UFC. So that collegiate wrestling, that ankle pick, that takedown city bullshit he's always spewing off. Yeah, where's it at? Because taking Bobby Green down would be big. Yep, but he's not shown it. The jiu-jitsu, this ability to create these crazy scrambles. Eddie Bravo, Imanari roll. Not effective. The game's passed him by. And he's not really gone out of his comfort zones to jump into an American top team or one of these big gyms because he doesn't want to train with these younger guys. He just wants to do his own bullshit in his garage, surrounded by a bunch of yes men, and then continue to fight. Well, that's fine and good. But against the king of the streets, Bobby Green, I don't know, man. Technical boxing advantage. I think he pieces him off if it stays standing. Bobby Green, surprisingly, pretty good takedown defense. Pretty stout, Submission defense, for the most part, he doesn't get taken down. Yeah, it's held up. Nobody's submitting Bobby Green. So to think that Tony Ferguson's got some crazy wrestling and grappling advantage over him, doesn't have. What he does have is his ability to stay right in your face and put pressure on you. And that don't work against Bobby Green because he's a natural counterpuncher that wants you to come forward. And whereas a guy like Drew Dober can hit pay dirt, take a beating, and catch him with that one big shot, Ferguson's not shown anything in the power department in years. Mm-hmm. So outside of how does he flash knock him down? I don't know. He'd have to overwhelm him. And overwhelming Bobby Green, easier said than done, bro. So this has all the makings of a fight that goes 15 minutes because Bobby Green's not really much of a power puncher himself. And both guys probably put up good volume, good up numbers, but Ferguson's face is bleeding everywhere. He's behind the punch count in all 3 rounds, and he drops the decision. So I got to go with Bobby Green. Everybody seems like they're on the same page. Don't like this money line. Been steamed up pretty good. Bobby Green's kind of a little but I feel like I've learned my lesson here on Tony Ferguson. He's not what he used to be.
No. And Bobby Green, 75.5 significant strikes on Prize Picks. I like it, but don't love it. Maybe Ferguson just dies, and then I lose my Bobby Green in over 1.5 too. But I feel pretty confident about this one going over 7.5 minutes. But
this one's going to be similar, I think, to the Nate Diaz fight, and that Nate Diaz is clowning him. At one point, he walks over to the cage. He rests both of his arms over the cage, takes a break, looks over at him, and just slaps him silly. Like, he clowned on him. Bobby Green is very much a Nate Diaz type guy. And once he gets his confidence going and he gets talking shit and he gets slapping you silly, that's when he's at his best. That shoulder roll, not going to work against everybody. Against Tony Ferguson's lazy ass jab, would be very effective. And I think he just counters him all night.
Yep. We're on the same page. All right, moving on down. We've got Kevin Holland taking on Michael Chiesa. Kevin Holland is a minus 145 favorite. Chiesa can be had for plus 125. Let me hear your thoughts first.
To me, it's all about what version of Michael Chiesa is showing up to this fight. And that I don't know. You can watch embedded stuff, you can watch training footage, you can go on social media, you can try to get the digs in. But Michael Chiesa at his best throws Kevin Holland around effortlessly and out grapples him, spends most of the fight in top position, doesn't put up a whole lot of numbers in terms of ground and pound or anything like that. Maybe finds a submission, but more often than not, just grounds him for an easy 2 rounds out of 3 and wins a decision at the bare minimum. But Michael Chiesa in this day and age, 34 years old, tons of injuries, been fighting for a long time, and he's got a lot of compounded injuries. So he's not really fighting as often as he used to, and the results aren't just quite there anymore. If you go back to his fight with, man, there was a wicked good stretch, dude. Carlos Condit can't wrestle, so Diego Sanchez, yeah, you guy can wrestle, 5 takedowns on him. Rafael dos Anjos can wrestle, not at an elite level, and Chiesa shows up at an elite level, 6 easy takedowns. His fight with Neil Magny, you remember that one. We watched it in the old office in Toronto, and parlay killer, man. Like, he just absolutely took him down effortlessly, lots of top control, very physically strong. And Michael Chiesa at his best, that's what he does. He's got pretty effective takedowns and very, very, very solid, tight top control. But you look at his last 2 fights, and he's not the same guy. That's when the injuries start to get to him. That's when he started to slow down. That's when he had to take time off and rehab injuries, get surgeries. And again, the last 2 results just haven't been there for him. His last fight against Sean Brady, he gives up the 5 takedowns. He just doesn't look in the fight. Again, looks very slow, looks lethargic. The fight before that against Vicente Luque, he got the spots he wanted. He got the takedown. Unfortunately, he gives up his neck and he gets caught in it. So coming back 2 years later, because those fights, their last fight was November 2021, sorry. So coming back nearly, not quite, but 2 years later, at 34 years old, I just don't know what kind of shape he's in. Him at his best, he's very kryptonic to a guy like Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland struggles with takedown defense, giving up, the easy takedowns to the superior wrestler, and his takedown defense, his grappling defense, solid. He's a BJJ black belt, but his get-up game's not quite there. He'll throw up some stuff, he'll talk some shit, but he pretty much loses all of his fights where he's not able to keep the fight standing. And against a prime Chiesa, he wouldn't be able to. I just don't think we're getting a prime Michael Chiesa. So part of me wants to take the shot. Plus money, Michael Chiesa, styles make fights. He's got the style to win, but I'm not fully convinced that he's the guy he used to be. Almost 2 years off, not quite there. And with Holland, again, BJJ black belt. So if he does get taken down, survive, get back to your feet. He's got a lot of volume standing. He's got a striking advantage. And beyond that, he's been working on his wrestling. He's been working with Johnny Hendricks over in Texas. He's been trying to shore up some of those deficiencies. So I hope I'm not wrong. Chiesa goes and takes him down like Chimaev and submits him early in the first round and is easy plus money here, because part of me thinks that could happen. But yeah, the other part of me is like, he's been off almost 2 years for a reason. And you can see writing on the wall, the injuries have been occurring for years. The last 2 fights, results aren't quite there. The weight cuts to 55 are killing him. He moved up to 170, isn't as strong at 170. Now you're jumping off the bench, jumping back into out of the frying pan into the fire. Like, it's just, I can't quite get there on that plus money. So I can see Chiesa coming out there and doing something if he's at his best. Just not fully convinced that he is.
Yeah, I don't know about him going out there and getting like a quick submission. Like, Kevin Holland has shown decent enough grappling to at least survive against a bunch of guys. Chimaev is Chimaev. Chimaev is a 185-pounder now. He's incredibly large, incredibly strong. Kevin Holland used to fight at 185 pounds. Chiesa was at 155. I think, Chiesa was super, super big for 155, and Holland was a little too skinny for 185. So I don't know if the size is going to be too crazy between the two of them. I took Chiesa by decision. One of my books was hanging plus 399. There's like plus 330s and plus 340s pretty widely available out there. I took it more because it was like considerably off market on that number, but I think Chiesa by decision is how I like this. He's been doing a lot of broadcasting. A lot of the broadcasters come in there. They've got an analytical approach to how they fight when they make returns. I mean, it's been 2 years. Looking through his Instagram, he's looking like he's in very, very, very good shape. The abs are showing up on the gram. So good on him in that respect. And yeah, I think that his style is literally Kevin Holland kryptonite. If he hangs out at range, he is going to get boxed up, and it's not even going to be remotely close against Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland super, super long, uses all that reach, uses all that length to his advantage every single time he goes out there. But yeah, the takedown defense is a massive liability for him. It always has been. I mean, Derek Brunson was able to take him down like 6 times. I think Chiesa early and often sticks to that game plan, gets the fight to the mat, makes it super ugly. It may not be a very... I mean, I will be happy if this is a very, very ugly fight, essentially, because an ugly fight means Chiesa is getting takedowns, doing a lot of, like, holding up against the cage, making this, like, gritty, grimy, and putrid, and hopefully cashing a big plus money ticket for me. That's my take on that one and where my money is. Moving on down, we got Gabriel Bonfim taking on Trevin Giles, minus 320 for Bonfim, plus 260 for Giles. Who you got?
Yeah, so I'm not a huge Bonfim guy, if we're being honest, with Gabriel. I really liked his brother, turns out. Shouldn't have liked his brother that much because he has some flaws to his game, certainly. But with Gabriel Bonfim on the Contender Series against Trey Waters, like, he's getting hit, man. He's getting hit a lot. He seems like an all-action guy, very athletic, good shape, big power, got a lot of finishing abilities, but still very green in his own right. So you don't want to be getting him at too much of a favorite price tag. But again, against Trey Waters, he ends up winning the fight relatively easy. He looks like the real deal, but again, very, very green. Next fight against Munir Lazzez, sorry. Yeah, Munir Lazzez. And Munir Lazzez is plus money underdog, right? So I'm using a lot of that same theory here that this kid's hittable. I don't know that his volume is like great. Certainly a big power guy. But maybe you can chip away at him, get him down the stretch. Lazzez is a big guy. He's got some decent volume. He's been training in Las Vegas. Enough for me to kind of get behind him in that spot. And then he just easy money guillotine choke in the first round, loses. So on one hand, Bonfim's getting the results. On the other hand, I think that there's a lot to be desired there. I don't know that he's a great counter striker. I don't know that he's got great cardio. I don't know that he's got great takedown defense. I don't know that he's got a whole bunch of stuff. He looks somewhat suspect against Trey Waters, and then goes out there and smokes out Munir Lazzez very early in the first round, kind of before the fight got going. So part of me thinks if he's going to come in at minus 300, minus 250, I'm willing to take a fade on him. And then your fade's Trevin Giles. Like, how do you get behind Trevin Giles? Well, he has won 2 fights in a row. He's on a little bit of a winning streak right now. And I think he's kind of terribly undersized. He's outmatched. He's very gun shy. All of his fights, he's looking to counterpunch. He puts a very low volume. His last 2 wins, last one, Preston Parsons. He lands 55 over the course of 3 rounds, gives up 3 takedowns, wins a split decision. Before that, against Louis Koski, he lands 25 significant strikes over the course of 3 rounds. Losses last 2 before that, 8 against Michael Morales, 10 against Dricus du Plessis, 27 against Roman Delites. That one went 15. Knocked out Bavon Lewis in the 3rd round, had landed 38 in that fight. And then squeaked by James Krause, who took the fight on 24 hours notice, moved up 2 weight classes with 71. 71 is his career high in the UFC. So he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 fights in the UFC. 71 in a fight with James Krause, who bet against himself, took the fight on 48 hours notice, and moved up 2 weight class. Crazy. So Giles just doesn't have it for me, because how are you going to beat Bonfim? Well, if you're planning on tiring him out down the stretch, I'm going to need more volume. If you're going to plan on countering him all night, with Giles has a good jab, he could do. Again, you're going to need a whole lot more volume. If you plan on maybe taking advantage of his suspect chin, you're going to need to show some power. If you look at Trevin Giles on the regional scene, LFA, Legacy back in the day, he's got some legitimate power. In the UFC, it's just not there. Cardio, not great. Watch the Roman Delites fight. And now you're putting him up in altitude in Utah. That low output's going to be even lower than it should be. And Bonfim might gas out too, because he's very explosive. But I just feel like he's going to be a little bit faster, a little bit sharper, throw up a little bit more, force him to the cage. Could definitely take him down. And for the record, Trevin Giles is grappling. I want to say he's a black belt. I watched him grapple Mike Malott one time. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure he was listed as a black belt, but Mike Malott took him down relatively easily and submitted him. Or didn't submit him, sorry, but took him down a whole bunch and out-grappled him. I can see Bonfim doing the same thing. Landing something, catching a hold of the neck, jumping on the guillotine. You know, he seems like an opportunistic submission threat, but more of a power puncher than anything else. So I will take Bonfim, But I'm looking to fade this guy in the near future. Giles is just not my guy.
Yeah, I generally agree with most of it. Minus 320 on the money line. Really can't get behind that all that much. I did put some money on the under 1.5 at minus 125. Bonfim it's kind of like when with like McKinney. When McKinney kind of first broke into the scene, it's just like, from what I see from Gabriel Bonfim, it's like he looks like an under machine. If it's close to a pick 'em, I'm going to take the under 1.5s every single time until I'm wrong, which, I mean, Trevin Giles does present some issues where I could foresee this fight getting a little bit extended. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, the Drickus fight, Drickus obviously is fighting for a title, so it doesn't look as bad now. Yeah. And that was at 185 pounds. Michael Morales, same thing, I guess. They're at 185, but he showed a little bit of issues with his chin in those fights. Earlier on in his career, being susceptible to the guillotine choke against Gerald Meerschaert and Zach Cummings. Like, Bonfim looks like a opportunistic finisher. If Trevin Giles wins this fight, I don't feel too good about my under 1.5, but I like Bonfim to get a finish relatively early in this fight. So then, like, on Prize Picks, I believe like his significant strikes is like 37.5. I like the under on that too. I just think that Bonfim gets him out of there early. I'm looking to fade him down the line, but I've never been a Trevin Giles guy. I'm not really a believer in what he does. So, yeah, we're on the same page there. Minus 320. It really doesn't seem like there's much meat on the bone there. Moving on down, we got Marcos Rogerio de Lima taking on Derrick Lewis. Minus 200 for Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Plus 170 for the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, who is on one hell of a losing streak right now. It is not pretty. This fight is going to be so disgusting. We're at 4,300 feet of altitude. Big boys that just look tired like 2.5 minutes into the fight in a lot of situations. I know Marcos Rogerio de Lima has made some big improvements. He's, you know, when he leans on that wrestling, he's got great leg kicks. When he leans on that wrestling, he's been able to go the full 3 rounds. He hasn't really gassed out all that much. But this fight could be super, super ugly if it gets extended with these big boys up on top of a mountain. What are your thoughts here? Because you know me, heavyweight volatility. I don't know how. I think if you wanted to bet Marcos Rogerio de Lima, it's like, I feel like you missed your shot. Like, he's like minus 225 in a lot of spots there. And I know Derrick Lewis has looked bad, but it only takes one. It only takes one big punch. Derrick Lewis could, you know, get the finish. I took a small shot on Derrick Lewis by knockout at plus 270 because honestly, it's like I'd be stunned to see him win a decision here. I feel like his knockout price is his money line at plus 270. I was just like, you know, throw a few shekels at it. If I never see him again, I'm not going to be stunned. But yeah, Lewis by KO is my official pick. What about you?
Lewis by KO, baby. This has got all the makings of a greasy heavyweight fight. And again, I would much rather be holding that plus money ticket in said greasy heavyweight fight. So you can look at Derrick Lewis and be like, ooh, it's a bad streak right now. In fact, he's lost. Well, he's 1-5. 1-4 in his last 5 fights. 1-5 in his last 6 fights. Not good. And you look at the opponents, right? So he's got a win over Curtis Blades, who's a top contender. Not quite a title challenger. Never been a title challenger, but top contender. The fight with Cyril Gahn is a former champion and a former title challenger. Chris Daukaus, yeah, I don't know, he's like a top 15 guy at one point, I guess. Tai Tuivasa, a former title challenger. Sergey Pavlovich, a future title challenger. And Sergey Spivak, probably a future title challenger as well. On a really good run right now. Fairly young for the division. Solid grappling skills. I think all of those guys absolutely smoke Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Which one of those guys does Marcos Rogerio de Lima beat? Yeah, none of them. So if roles are reversed, because Derrick Lewis is fighting the best guys, get paid money to fight the best guys. If his roles reversed, Rogerio de Lima is on this awful-ass losing streak. It's Marcos, meanwhile, his winning streak consists of Waldo Cortez Acosta, Andre Arlovsky, Ben Rothwell, Maurice Green, Ben Sassoli. The losses are to Blagoy Ivanov and Alexander Romanov, both of which are also shit. So, you know what I mean? This is apples and oranges, baby. Yeah, one guy's on a winning streak and one guy's on a losing streak. Yeah, I get that. But I think talent level is a huge difference, man. Huge difference. And so altitude, right? Because we got both sluggish heavyweights, not known for their cardio. So who's altitude going to favor? It's going to favor Derrick Lewis because Derrick Lewis has got a hell of a heart on him. The only reason he ever himself got up to title challenger status is because he refuses to quit on himself. He lost first 3 rounds against Shamil Abdurakhimov, knocked him out in the 4th. You know, he's had a bunch of these come from behinds. His fight with Alexander Volkov, he loses pretty much the entire fight, knocks him out with a few seconds left. He's willing to go through those tough times to come out on the other side. Rogerio de Lima isn't. He's won a few decision wins, don't get me wrong. In those fights, he generally scores about 3 takedowns. His opponent never gets up, and he just holds them down. His other fights, he bangs it out, and if he gets the best of you, great. If you put him through any type of adversity, he will quit. He quit in the Alexander Romanov fight where he gave up a forearm choke. He's a black belt. He gave up a forearm choke submission to Romanov. Like, what are you doing? His fight with Stefan Struve drops him in the first round. Lay-in praise him. Second round, Stefan Struve puts him in a bad spot. Immediately quits. His grappling is suspect. His takedowns are suspect. His striking, yeah, he's got some heavy power. I get it. He's not the biggest heavyweight going. He used to fight at 205 pounds. And he's sloppy and he's sluggish and he's 38 years old. And like in no world should he be a minus 200 favorite over anybody in the division. And yet he is over Derrick Lewis. So Lewis also 38 years old and on a bad run. I get that. But remember how Lewis would do that thing in pretty much all of his fights where he gets taken down, guys holding on top of him. And at some point he just decides like, it's time to get up. And he just sits back up and gets up. Yeah, that's not going to work against everybody. That's not going to work against most guys. Most guys that are good grapplers. Rogerio de Lima, suspect. Just deciding it's time to get up will work. And he will get back up. And he probably will get taken down a few times, but he will get back up. And when he does, he's going to hit him at some point. And Rogerio de Lima, tired from altitude, hurt from getting punched up by Black Beast, will look for a way out and quit. So I'm also going to take Derrick Lewis on this one.
All right. We got Roman Kopylov taking on Claudio Ribeiro. Roman Kopylov is a minus 225 favorite. Ribeiro can be had for plus 190. Who you got?
So Claudio Ribeiro is a classic example of a guy who I'll lose money on because I know he's bad. I know he's a bad fighter. And as a result, you look to fade him. You see them, you want to fade them. If you can get plus money on the opponent, you don't even care who the opponent is, you're willing to fade them. He fought Abdul Razak Al Hassan. We broke it down on the fight. Just don't think this guy's very good. On the regional scene, he takes a ton of damage. Defensively, he's not very sound. Doesn't have good counterboxing. Stays in range, doesn't have very good footwork. He's there to engage you. And his cardio, also not that great. He'd fought limited guys on the regional scene and had good results, but you watch the fights. Oof, tough fights against limited opposition. So we cash against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He gets melted in the second round. Looked okay in the first. And then, tires. It shouldn't be there. Gets taken out in the second. Great. And then I try to ride the piggy bank one more time, and I bet against him against Joseph Holmes. And this is why this guy loses me money. Joseph Holmes is awful. You shouldn't bet Joseph Holmes. You should not do it. Don't put money on this guy. But you're just over eager to fade a guy that you know is bad. In this case, Claudio Ribeiro. So I did bet Joseph Holmes, and awful, dude. So awful. What Claudio showed you there, though, is pretty much what you see in a lot of his fights, that he is very aggressive early. He is a power puncher. He's willing to get in your face and throw down. He's 1-1 in the UFC. He's got nothing to lose. He's chasing bonuses. So against anybody, he's going to be dangerous, considered dangerous, because his willingness to engage, that early propensity to knock somebody out, and some decent amount of power. But the same warning flags are still on him. Cardio's not great. Defensively, he's a liability. If you can take that early damage, or at least survive early, you're going to have a lot of time to land that kill shot later on, because he'll leave you all the openings, and he's just going to fatigue and curl over. Roman Kopylov didn't start off great in the UFC. In Russia, he looked like a world beater, man. This guy was a legitimate champion in Russia. Comes to the UFC, kind of soft results. But I'll be damned if he hasn't made improvements in pretty much all of his fights. And his level of competition, of course, is much higher. Lost to Carl Roberson in hindsight. Not great, but not bad. Lost to Albert Duraev. Again, he goes full 3 rounds. He hurt Duraev a couple times in that fight. He had a lot of opportunities. Takedown defense, again, just wasn't quite up to snuff. In terms of volume, it's there. In terms of technical boxing, big advantage over Claudio Ribeiro. Takedown defense is his issue. But against Alicio Di Chirico, keeps the fight standing. Against Puanahale Soriano, who's very durable, he just absolutely beat the crap out of him. Again, you're seeing a guy who jumps into the UFC, struggles under the bright lights, isn't quite up to snuff in the grappling department, makes those improvements, gets better. Yeah, he looks like a 205-pound Michael Cera or a 205-pound Chase Hooper. Like, yeah, he's a goofy looking guy. Sorry, middleweight, 185-pound Chase Hooper or Michael Cera. He's a goofy looking guy, but I'll be damned if you don't know how to fight. He's always had that, that hand-to-hand combat Russian background. He's always had those good strengths. He's just struggled to put it all together. And I do feel like in his last two, his best performances, continuously getting better. In this fight, he's got a big volume advantage. He's got a big cardio advantage. He's got a big technical boxing advantage. Claudio Ribeiro's not really shown that grappling, not really shown that wrestling. So outside of Kopylov just getting caught with something and folding over, which again is always possible, I think he just outworks him down the stretch, puts it to him, probably finishes him inside of 3, but at the very least wins the decision on the basis of outworking him. And last but not least, like if you're worried about Kopylov just getting caught with that big shot, he's never been knocked out in his career. He's fought a lot of decent level of guys, never been knocked out. And if you see the guy's nose, he'd been hit. The guy been hit before, but he'd never been knocked out. So I just don't see it coming out of Claudio Ribeiro. I see the better work rate and the better technical skills coming from Roman Kopylov.
Yeah, the more I kind of thought about it, I'm on the page with you. I mean, minus 225 seems actually kind of fair. I thought that the Kopylov fight against Puna really showed what this guy's all about.
He looked really good, man.
He looked really good. Like, I was impressed after that performance. And I was on Ribeiro against Joseph Holmes because I knew that Joseph Holmes really doesn't have much of a stand-up game.
Bad.
And then when Ribeiro takes down Holmes in round 2 to pound him out, you're just like, all right, this is like, now he's able to go down into his world. I thought both of these guys have made significant improvements. Like the Ribeiro who showed up was a lot more tactical in his approach against Joseph Holmes, but he wasn't dealing with much of a threat on the feet like he was against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Like Holmes doesn't really have any sort of power to speak of. Technical striking, technical ability on the feet should be all in Kopilov's side. Sure, Ribeiro could land like an absolute heater and potentially win that way, but I don't think I really kind of think that these guys hang out at range, and Kopylov has shown me a lot more skill. I like Kopylov to win as well. It's just one of those fights that's like, you know me, I don't really bet too many, minus 225s. I don't take too many shots on like big favorites. I'm not entirely sure like if there's a prop for me to approach on this. It's probably better as a money line play. I haven't put any money on it yet, but it's one that I've got circled because I really see a lot of the same things that you do. And I think that when I watched that Puna fight, I was just like, all right, this Kopylov kid's for real. Like, or he's not even a kid. He's 32, in fairness. He just looks like a kid because, I mean, the curly hair, I suppose.
It looks like a kid with a shattered bridge of a nose.
Yeah, he's like Chase Hooper, but he's seen some shit. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think Kopylov is pretty clearly the side here. I will not be dog chasing on Claudio Ribeiro in this spot. All right, moving on down, we got Jake Matthews taking on Darrius Flowers, minus 255 for Matthews, plus 215 for Darrius Flowers. I mean, Flowers was on the Contender Series. It's such a weird fight. He just kind of like, does like a flip takedown slam, and his opponent taps out due to his shoulder being knocked out. The guy trains with Bilal Muhammad, which, I mean, that's probably much more impressive training partner on a day-to-day basis than anything Jake Matthews has done. Jake Matthews is kind of like that prospect that just never really came together. And I can understand, like, this line was a lot wider, and I can understand why people are betting Darrius Flowers here. Flowers has fought up at like 185 pounds. I mean, it seemingly missed weight at 185 pounds for like one of his LFA fights not that long ago. He's very short. He's giving up a lot in like the height and reach department, but he's built pretty thick, and he's obviously pretty strong. Good training partners. Jake Matthews has just always been a tough guy to cap, I find, because, I mean, he's usually a big-time favorite, and the guy who showed up against Andre Fiallo, I think, absolutely dances around Darrius Flowers, absolutely dominates this fight, and crushes him. The easiest way to beat Flowers in most of his fights that he's lost has been by submission. Jake Matthews' only win by submission was against Shinso Ansai like years ago, at least in the UFC. There's a lot of things that direct you towards like taking an underdog shot. I just kind of feel like I missed my spot. But yeah, that Fiallo fight from Jake Matthews, if that guy shows up, I think he wins this fight very, very easily. But like against Semelsberger, getting taken down 3 times, volume just wasn't there. He's very, very hesitant. It's just like it's always been you never really know what to expect from this kid from camp to camp. So I think it's dog or pass. So for the purpose of the show, I'll pick Darrius Flowers. I don't know if I'm gonna have the cojones to actually put money down on it though. What's your take here?
Man, I feel the exact same way, dude. I feel the exact same way. Jake Matthews to me has always been like a good prospect, but someone that never could get over the hump. Like he's fighting in the UFC. He was in the Ultimate Fighter. I think he was like 19 or 20. He's been fighting in the UFC for like what feels like a decade, and still he's only 28 years old. So it feels like there's still something there. There's still some talent. There's still an ability to jump into the ranks, maybe still be a prospect at some level. On the other hand, it's like you've just seen a whole lot of humiliating defeats from him, big losses when he was the big favorite, not a whole lot of improvement. Moves up to 170 pounds. Again, the results are there early, and then not so much in that last fight against Matthew Semelsberger where he gets ragdolled. You tried to warn me. You did, Paul. You did. You said don't bet Jake Matthews minus 300 over Matthew Semelsberger. Because remember that Akbar Theriola fight? The guy. It was a long running joke on the show. Don't bet Jake Matthews when he's too big of a favorite, because the Akbar Theriola fight where he's a minus 800 favorite and Akbar folds him up with a head kick. He came back and won, but that moment there was like, the kid, there's a lot to be desired. And you bring up a fight that's like 8 years old, 7 years old, hasn't been dropped since, but you see him shaky in a lot of these fights. You tried to give me the warn. Matthew Semelsberger proceeds to do exactly that, dude. Everything he landed just hurt Jake Matthews. He scored 3 knockdowns. Matthews, maybe his striking's getting better. His father was an Australian kickboxing champion, I believe. So like his father's from a kickboxing base. His early career was kind of spent kickboxing. But if you can't take a shot, if your durability is not quite there, if your confidence isn't there, it's never going to catch up. So he switches to grappling. And I believe he's a BJJ black belt. But when you watch him struggle against actual grapplers, not really a BJJ black belt. So now he's lost in no man's land. He doesn't really want to strike with these guys for a prolonged period of time. His wrestling is good but not great, and not that effective at 170 pounds, especially not as effective as it used to be at a 155. And the submission game, like you said, one submission win in the last number of years against Shinzo Anzai, not quite there. Not only that, he's fought in America 3 times. He's lost all 3 of those fights. He's 7-1 or 7-2 or something outside of there. But Matthew Semelsberger was in Las Vegas. He got dropped 3 times and lost a decision. Against Sean Brady, he got choked out in the 3rd round and pretty much got clowned on. That was also in Las Vegas. And he had lost a fight to Kevin Lee back in the day in Las Vegas. This card's in Utah. It's not in Las Vegas. But the majority of his career has been beating Deshaun Johnson, bum-ass boxer, never won a fight in the UFC. Wagner Roca, dope-ass jiu-jitsu guy, no success in MMA. Akbar Theriola, can. Johnny Case, I thought was going to end up being good, but personal issues, not that good. Boyan Velikovic, sorry. Yeah, he's actually not bad. PFL guy, bounces around, but like a regional show journeyman. Yeah, Ling Jiang Li was a dope one, especially because Jing Liang Li was trying to eye gouge him the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Shinzo Anzai, never won a fight in the UFC. Rostam Akhman, doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, because I brought that up just to see the countries that he had fought in. But he didn't even look good in that fight. Went to decision with him. Bum. Never won a fight in the UFC. Emil Weber-Meek, fan favorite, not a great UFC fighter. Diego Sanchez. At that point of his career, not the same guy. Again, decisions him. Andre Fiallo knocked him out, but it seems like everybody outside of Michel Pereira does that. So he looks good when they bring guys to Australia and New Zealand, and he fights over there and they're limited competition. But against the step ups when they've brought him over stateside, yeah, he's 0-3. So all enough reason for me to think that he just doesn't perform his best here. Now, again, Darrius Flowers, am I going to make the same mistake of trying to fade a guy with just whoever's there? It's a worse guy. And Darrius Flowers, for the record, is considered a bum. He's 1-10 as a pro boxer. That's a fact. That's a fact. His pro boxing record is 1-10. But at the same time, dude likes to throw hands. He likes to throw. And when you're Matthew Semelsberger, you're not some great striker, but you drop Jake Matthews with pretty much everything that landed. Darrius Flowers is capable of doing the same thing. He's got some boxing. Yeah, he's 1-10, but he's got 11 pro boxing matches. He can throw a little bit. His takedown defense is okay. His desire to go out there and exchange with people is certainly there. If it stays standing, you could see one of those, oh shit, I bet Jake Matthews as a favorite, and now he's dropped on his backside. Is his grappling so great, his wrestling so great, that he easily tosses Darius Flowers around? Yeah, I don't know about that. This Amaran Gogolots guy was supposed to toss him around, and Darius Flowers ends up dislocating the guy's shoulder. He's still young enough that he's probably making improvements. Boxing wasn't quite for him, but in MMA, he's a scrappy, willing, engaged opponent. And similar to an Akbar Theriola, he's capable of just landing that shot and putting him down. So I don't know that I want Darius Flowers, but I can totally see it happening. And as you see the line start to shift, you can't fault anybody, really. This is a decent enough underdog shot, especially because Matthews just doesn't perform when he's outside of his home turf. Or, at least somewhat close to his home turf.
I wanted to hate it, but I don't.
So did I. But
I watched a couple fights from Flowers, and I'm like, I see it. I see why people were taking the shot. It's like Jake Matthews, his chin, he's been knocked around so many times. He's been around since he was a kid with us, it feels like. We've watched him grow up, and he just never really turned into the prospect that we expected from him. So now watch, he goes out there, he takes this guy down and chokes him out immediately. Because I think that's the way to fade Darius Flowers. Like, I think if you are able to take him down, he's very, very strong, especially early in the fight. If you're able to take him down, I don't think he's got some great jiu-jitsu. Or his jiu-jitsu defense seems to be very, very much lacking. But Jake Matthews isn't really that guy. He's got one submission win in his UFC career, at least in the last 5-6 years. So be interesting. Moving on down, we got CJ Vergara taking on Vincius Salvador, -140 for Vergara, +120 for Salvador. Who you got?
Yeah, I think I'm willing to take a shot on Vinicius Salvador at plus money. Again, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it. Maybe you can talk some sense into me. On one hand, I want that Vinicius Salvador plus money. I mean, we've seen in his fight with Shannon Ross, he knocks him out. I suppose everybody does, so that one's not impressive in the slightest bit. But against Victor Altamirano, his striking looks pretty good. It looks like he's a big guy for the division, has some heavy power, has some decent striking abilities. His takedown defense, not quite there. He gives up the 3 takedowns to Victor Altamirano, and that grappling deficiency is kind of what led to his loss. But it seemed to me like he was a sufficient enough striker and a kind of a big guy for 125 pounds. When I look at CJ Vergara, meanwhile, he's not scored one single takedown in any of his 5 UFC fights. He's not shown you any type of grappling. He's not shown you any type of wrestling. So it's safe to assume that this one's probably going to be striker versus striker. And on one hand, I got Vergara, who's undersized, giving up almost 3 inches in the reach department, giving up some height, likes to stay right in front of you in the pocket and exchange. But if you're not going to threaten the takedown, you're actually playing into Vinicius Salvador's hand. He's the heavier power puncher. He's the larger man. And I just feel like he wants to keep it standing. So Vinicius at plus money, striker versus striker, close fight, need the judges to take my side, I'll jump with it. And I look at Vergara as well. It's like, well, he's 2-2 in the UFC. All right, fair enough. But of those two wins, Clayton Rodriguez, right? He got outstruck 81-71 and he had given up the 2 takedowns. I think there was 14 or 15 media members that had scored that fight. Pretty much all of them for Clayton Rodriguez. Pretty much everyone that watched the fight scored it for Clayton Rodriguez. But similar to a Davey Grant screw job, CJ Vergara gets his hand raised. Yeah, it's a good win on paper because Clayton's all right. But yeah, he missed weight. Not Vergara. I think Clayton missed weight. He showed up slow. He probably still should have won. Vergara gets the win. Vergara versus Daniel Lacerda. He got his ass kicked in the first round, Paul. He got dropped twice. He got absolutely smoked. And then Daniel Lacerda has a tendency to actually tire out. Vergara does it to him again, stays in the pocket, boxes him up, wins. At plus money, Vinicius Salvador, again, he's got an ability to drop him. He's got the power to hurt him. He's got good striking. I think if it just stays striker versus striker, I would want the plus money. Sign me up. The only thing that's causing me that little bit of hesitancy, or I guess it's plus money, so there's always some hesitancy, but the only really thing I'm not jumping full board on is that it's in Utah. So cardio is going to matter. You see all these guys tire out every time. Whenever they go to Utah, whenever they go to Mexico City, whenever they go to Denver, the card is sloppy. Everybody tires out. These power striking Brazilians will probably kick the crap out of you at that first round, but their cardio doesn't really hold up. And against Altamirano, yeah, he was getting taken down, but it wasn't like he was a world beater by any stretch. Vergara's not very good. He's not going to take you down. His boxing's not all that good. He gets hit entirely too much. He stands in front of you, but I'll be damned if that boy ain't coming to scrap. So that in itself makes him dangerous at altitude. If this thing becomes a shit show and becomes sloppy, he will thrive in those situations. So keep in mind on the live betting opportunities in this one, I think. But yeah, I need dogs. I need dogs pre-flop. I am actually going to take Vincius Salvador. I'm just hoping he brings his lunchbox with him and shows up in good shape.
Yeah, I don't feel great about a side on either side of this. On Prize Picks, 57.5 significant strikes for Vergara. I kind of think that this goes at least into the third round, and based on his previous fights that have stayed upright and standing, not getting taken down by Tyra and controlled. Even against Clinton Rodriguez, who was able to take him down twice, he still got over that number pretty comfortably with 71. So I like that as the side. And yeah, man, I think it's pretty accurate, to be perfectly honest. I don't really see too much of an edge. Maybe I'll side ever so slightly. I don't think I'm going to bet it whatsoever with you on Vincius Salvador, but I think this is kind of like one of those fights goes to decision, and wouldn't be surprised by a split based on, who's landing the better strikes, if somebody has an advantage in grappling, I don't see it on paper pre-flop, so I guess we'll find out. So yeah, I'll side with
one guy's from Brazil.
That means
we don't know
nothing.
anything
Daniel
about
Lacerda was from Brazil. He can't
but
grapple, he just kickboxes.
cardio.
He got a fifth fight, by the
true.
way. He's on a 4-fight losing streak, and his fights are so fire that they gave him a fifth. Like, you don't lose 4 in a row typically. That kind of speaks to like the era of UFC that we're in. They're like, yeah, you're in fun fights. So he's fighting that Edgar Chairez guy who fought Tyra and fought him to decision. They're giving him.
That's the move in the UFC, is that if you go out and you bang it out for $12,000 or $15,000, they will bring you back all day long. If you win fights and they're not super entertaining, even if you're fighting good guys, look at Damir Ashmagulov, cut from the UFC. Kakramanov, Sayub Kakramanov, cut from the UFC. Dude, these guys are good. These guys are really, really good. The thing is that when you're drinking a Miller Lite or whatever beer is not sponsoring our show right now, yeah, you kind of want to see like a bag. Not me. I love martial arts. I love grappling. I love wrestling. I can understand those guys are some of the best guys in the world. Keep them in the UFC. But if you go to Daniel Lacerda, gets paid 12 and 12, probably just the first 12 because he doesn't win and collect the second one, and Venom tosses him $3,000 and a slap on the ass. Come on, man. How are you going to pass that up? You're going to get a fun 7.5 minutes out of it. Sure, go for it. Molly McCann. I'm the idiot that put her on my second ticket last week, but what I saw from that fight, it was like, just go home. Just go home. There's something else you could be doing with your life. Yeah, there's most definitely something else you could be doing as a career choice. But this ain't it. This ain't it, dog. Move down to 15, whatever, straw weight, going to be the queen of that division. You can't make the choices for them, but for the UFC, it's like that's the type of fighter they're looking to keep. They win, some stupid spinning back elbow. If they lose, they get submitted by some rudimentary technique inside of a few minutes.
Yeah, it's times have changed out there, Cody.
have they ever?
All right, moving on down. We've got Matthew Semelsberger taking on Uros Medic. Minus 200 for Semelsberger, plus 170 for Medic. This line has moved a lot. It was like minus 125 Semelsberger, and I understand why people sided with that. Now at like minus 200, I'm a little bit hesitant. I didn't beat that line move. A lot of it makes sense. It's like Medic, we know that he is dangerous. Early on in the fight, he's going to throw all of the volume at you early and often. We just don't know. It's just like, what happens if someone survives that after the first 7.5 minutes or so? Does he have the type of cardio to hold on deep into fights? And it's like, we haven't really seen it because, outside of the Jalen Turner fight, and, fair is fair. It's like that was a pretty tough matchup for him against a rising contender. I don't know if you call Jalen Turner a contender anymore after the loss to Hooker, but like a solid guy who'd made tons of improvements and had a frame that would be problematic for a guy like Uros Medic. Otherwise, yeah, he's just on the Alaskan regional scene, just blowing guys out in the first, 2-3 minutes. Really, really tough to get a read on him. Semelsberger has been, knocked out once in his career. He was back in 2018. He was just in there with Jeremiah Wells and, didn't really have... I mean, he was the one doing the knockdowns, right? And he was getting taken down by Jeremiah Wells. I mean, I like Semelsberger. I get a little bit nervous going against guys like Medic who have this finishing ability. Semelsberger, I think Semelsberger is probably a better live play unless he's like getting takedowns super early, which I don't know if he's going to necessarily do. I think Medic is going to cause him some problems early, and you get a better price early, after like the first 5 minutes. So Semelsberger is going to be the pick. I'm not going to get to it at -200 though. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, you're almost Medic. Otherwise, would have been a straight up can. Another guy from Alaska FC, and had he stayed in Alaska, had he stayed in the confines of that, not very good, not very good. But he leaves. He goes to King's MMA, and he's gotten a lot better. Definitely a lot better. Is he limited? Oh hell yeah! But where he could be compared to where he is, night and day. And what we know is that he's got that natural Alaskan power. Is that finally he's got a coach that's been able to kind of put it up together to him, help him tie it all together, I guess I should say. But he's been off for a year. He's had a decent amount of injuries. And again, he's a first-round guy. I mean, the loss to Jalen Turner, I won't fault him for, but kind of starts to get tired, starts to get figured out the longer the fight goes. 3 minutes into it, he gets, eventually taken out. But then his next fight looked a lot better, man. He takes him to the second round, gets a knockout, looked pretty solid. Uros Medic has that big power. It's whether or not he can continuously hold that power through the 3 rounds, just like you said. Now you throw them at altitude over in Utah or in Salt Lake City. Yeah, part of me thinks that he's going to be the same thing he always is. Coming off a year-long layoff, mostly a first-round guy, potentially limited cardio. He's going to go out and he's going to fish for that first-round knockout. And Semelsberger has been knocked out in a long time. So more than likely, Semelsberger survives that early onslaught, pulls him into the second, pulls him in the third, and beats him up. The way to beat Matthew Semelsberger, at least from what we've seen, is take him down. His takedown defense trash. 6 takedowns against Jeremiah Wells. Dropped him twice. Has him dead to rights. Going to win this fight. But giving up the 6 takedowns, he just allowed Jeremiah Wells to bail himself out every time he was in any type of trouble. His loss to Alex Morono, it was a good fight. He dropped Morono as well. Down the stretch, he got figured out. His fight with Chaos Williams, again, he just gets out-volumed, outnumbered. Against Uros Medic, if Medic could carry that for multiple rounds, he could have a lot of success. So that I gotta lead towards Semelsberger having that superior volume, being able to actually fight 15 minutes, and hopefully just not getting caught. But of note, very important to note here, these are his list of opponents. Carlton Minus, billed as a wrestler, was actually no good at all. Jason Witt, a complete wrestler. Chaos Williams, power puncher, but also sometimes, and I think he's like 50-50. 3 knockout wins in the UFC, 3 decision wins. Martin Sano, complete trash. AJ Fletcher, very young, but he's a wrestler grappler. Alex Morono, I don't think I'd consider him a power guy, but he's got decent volume. Jake Matthews, Jeremiah Wells, who's a wrestler. Renzo Gracie, black belt from Philly. He's not really fought a whole lot of power punchers, so I'm worried that his chin's not that good, that he's going to get into some stupid firefight, and that Medic, who's been off for a year, is going to plant him with something. Also, Medic has been off a year. Maybe he can wrestle a little bit. Maybe he's mixed in something. Like, he's got enough problems that make him dangerous enough for Semelsberger that I'm not super high on jumping in on this fight. But the pre-fight, because you got to make a pre-fight pick, will be Matthew Semelsberger. And then what I would advise and what I will do myself is live betting opportunity. If he smacks up Semelsberger in the first, but Semelsberger survives, again, I'm going to bank on that superior cardio. Don't get knocked out early. Can't carry in for those later rounds. If he does get caught early, well, I don't know. At least you get to avoid it from that standpoint.
All right. Finally, I don't know if people can hear that. We got somebody with a weed whacker around the studio here. So apologies if you hear that. It's a little bit distracting. And it's unfortunate because we are at the people's main event, Cody. It's very rare that the people's
This is a
main
weed
event.
whacker fight.
It's very rare that the people's main event is the first fight of the night. We got Miranda Maverick taking on my girl Cab. Minus 255 Maverick, plus 215 for Cab. I mean, you know where my money already is. I grabbed it at plus 270. People are going to come out. They're going to tell me that Miranda Maverick is some elite wrestler and she's going to cause all of these problems for Cachoeira. Well, one, I mean, after Maverick gets like controlled and basically made Jasmine Jasudavicius look like the second coming of Habib last time out there, I'm not so convinced that this girl can wrestle, opponents that are bigger than her. Cab's got 7 inches in the reach department. Girl will fight for your money. It could get a little bit dicey if this goes to the mat. Cab's, Priscilla's grappling has never been elite by any stretch of the imagination. But, I mean, that knockout win against Lipsky last time out, who all of a sudden is going on a bit of a run and looks like, that she's turned the corner. I just think my girl, Priscila Cachoeira, perpetually underrated. And at plus 270, there's still like plus 265s out on the market now. The market is moving in her direction. People are catching on to the legend of Cab. And I can't fall him for it because I'm already on the train, baby. Let's go. I didn't hear no bell.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And I'm not going to lie, cross my mind. These are the kind of spots that Pat Mayo kills me all the time on, okay? Because, yeah, it's a fight at the end of the day, and you never know what's going to happen. And Miranda Maverick has lost as a heavy favorite a few times, and Priscila Cachoeira has cashed as a heavy underdog a few times. So it just has all the makings of why not take that underdog poke. On one hand, Miranda Maverick is going to have the superior grappling. Just like you said, she got the wrestling advantage, got the grappling advantage. Thing is that her wrestling and grappling is not elite by any stretch. I mean, you look back to the Jasmine fight, you look back to the Aaron Blanchfield fight. She got mad exposed in the grappling department. Against Jasmine, she tried 3 takedowns. Of those 3 takedowns, over 3, but ended up on her back twice. Like, not only could she not get up the takedown, but she would give up the takedown in the process of initiating the clinch. Her striking, abysmal. She looked very hesitant, short reach, doesn't, follow through on her punches, no combinations, bounces a lot, but stares at her opponent. She did the same thing against Sabina Mazo, where she loses all of the striking exchanges, but she's able to bulldoze her to the ground 4 times. If she's not able to get takedowns against Priscila Cachoeira, she's getting beat up on the feet. Not only is it superior volume from Cachoeira, it's superior power, but it's also that grittiness. She throws elbows. She fights tight inside the pocket. She lands the bigger shots to the judges. If it's at altitude and they're both cardio, again, they're both tired, cardio is going to matter. Miranda Maverick's in fantastic shape. She's wickedly ripped up, and she accepts positions. And Priscila Cachoeira could be down 2 rounds like she was against Jin Young Kim, and she's still fighting. And judges will reward that. And so when you can get a good plus money tag, why not? Miranda Maverick just blew it for me last fight, but also minus 300 favorite against Jasmine Jasudavicius. And now they want you to pay like a minus 255 for her against Priscila Cachoeira. I'm not buying it. It's probably a close fight. It's probably a fight that goes 15 minutes. And then why not take that plus money flyer? But, grappling wins fights. And to me, I've got enough underdogs that I don't mind on this card I just like. I would give you a shoey bet if you want to take a shoey bet on this.
Give me 3 to 1. We'll do 3 to 1.
I'll give you 2 to 1.
No.
I'll give you 2 to 1.
Come on, man. No. We
already
did a shoey bet. Why do I have to give you another? Why do I have to give you extra little bits of EV? I mean, minus 255 is like the worst number for Maverick on market. There's a minus 350 out there. There's a minus 308 out there. Like minus 300 seems to be, or minus 300 seems to be pretty standard across the market. We don't.
Yeah,
I'm already
right,
so invested in this, Cody.
We know what's gonna happen here. We know what's gonna happen. Look at last week, little Cody doing good, riding high times. Molly McCann, 2 to 1 favorite.
That's why I said.
And then the week before that, we're crushing it. I decided to hedge out, thankfully. But it was Holly Holm, near to 2 to 1 favorite, loses. The bottom line is Pat Mayo is undefeated for a reason. The model works and it's consistent.
It's the CF dot model, man, and I've been preaching it since
screaming.
Pat stopped showing up, but like I've been preaching the CF dot model here quite a bit, and it works, man.
Crazy.
That's why the only reason I kind of stopped you there is because I'm worried about you consistently chasing this chick chalk. It's like I thought you would have learned your lesson last week with Molly Meatball McCann, but here we are again. Oh my God, Miranda Maverick, greatest wrestler on earth. All right, man.
And I will tell you this.
Don't tell me you're surprised on Saturday.
I know. I will tell you this. When you look at this week's big chalk, right? Like, where do you start at the top ticket? So Bobby Green minus 400. Yeah, it's chalky, but like, I think Bobby Green wins. I really do. The second biggest favorite on the card is Gabriel Bonfim. I don't think he's all that good, man. Like, I really wouldn't want him on my top ticket, but he's fighting Trevin Giles, who I also don't rate very highly. So, yeah, I think he wins, but I don't want him on the top two. But he's the second biggest favorite on the card. Your other big favorites consist of Jake Matthews, who we just broke down the fact that neither of us are confident in him in the slightest bit. I got Miranda Maverick, totally shit in the apple pie in her last fight, looked abysmal, and
it's coming out
to the CF dot model that quite literally is killing me.
She took this fight on short notice on top of that, right?
Yeah, there's actually a few short notice fights on this card that you need to keep into consideration because it's at altitude, and that thank you brought that up. Semelsberger's opponent, Semelsberger's opponent. He's taking the fight on. Let me check it out. Uros is taking the fight on 1 week notice, and Matthews' opponent's taking the fight on 2 weeks notice. Yeah, dude, it's hard to get in shape if you're jumping in short notice and you got to go 1,000 feet above sea level. But yeah, I get this. At the same time, everyone's at the same disadvantage. They'll all be tired.
Yeah, and I will say that Cachoeira very much struggles to make 125 pounds. So,
and she should have lost to Ji-Yeon Kim as well. But I hear you. She is gritty.
She misses this.
Grittier than.
She misses at this weight class all the time. So it's very likely this fight doesn't even happen. So like there's no point making a shoey bet on it. But my heart will be with Cab. That's it. Hit him with the PRP code. We'll get out of here.
Okay, we're going to hit him with the PRP. I could see myself flopping onto a couple extra favorites, but yeah, we got like 2 solid Rising cards. There's a Bellator versus Rising, then there's just a straight up Rising card, and there's the PFL, I think, as well. So this is like an action-packed weekend for fights. But of course, PRP, we're going to go with Justin Gaethje, dog number 1. Alex Pereira, dog number 2. Gonna go with Stephen Thompson. That one makes me worried. Bobby Green, Kevin Holland, Gabriel Bonfim, Derrick Lewis, dog number 3. Roman Kopylov, Jake Matthews, Vincius Salvador, dog number 4, Matthew Semelsberger, and Miranda Maverick. So 12 fight card, 4 underdogs, 33%. Sorry, actually 12 fights, 4. That's 25%. My bad. That's a quarter. But all the same, yeah. I think 4 underdogs is good for me. I could see a couple additional ones coming through. Michel Pereira could win on the basis of his wrestling, but that's more of a live bet situation. Michael Chiesa could win on the basis of his wrestling. That's more of a live bet situation. You'll know those fights early. The only fight you won't know early is Derrick Lewis, who probably gets trounced for a few rounds, and then pow, right in the kisser, puts him away, cashes for all of us everywhere. So I really like this card. You've got Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford as well this weekend. It's just like a fight fan's dream weekend, middle of the summer, very hot outside. So I hope that the bets can be as hot as the weather, because if so, hopefully cash this weekend and make it good. Top ticket hit last week, but Molly McCann really left a sour taste in my mouth. So never again. I've said that probably a few times in the past, but this time, never again.
This time you mean it, eh?
Yeah, no. I'm very tempted on taking that Miranda Maverick shoey bet with you, but at 3-1, I said at the top of the show I wasn't going to take no stupid bets like Shauna Bannon anymore, and you almost got me, Paul, from taking an equally stupid Shauna Bannon type bet.
I'm going to
pass on that one.
I'm already invested. Because my shoeys are so easy. I try to just do it when it's like, it'll give me some sort of interest in it. It's like, for instance, like I haven't actually bet anything on the co-main event, Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira. It's like, I'll do a shoey bet with Cody for it. But it's like, my heart's already with Priscila Cachoeira. So quickly, the prize picks spots that I have interest in, have put some money behind. We got Bobby Green, more than 75.5 significant strikes. We got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, more than 72.5 significant strikes. CJ Vergara, more than 57.5 significant strikes. Bonfim, less than 37.5 significant strikes. I just think he kind of gets him out of there early, hopefully in the first 1.5 rounds. Holland, more than 41.5. Just, I hope, I bet on Chiesa by decision, but it's like 41.5 is not very much. I expect him to land, at the beginning of each round for a little bit before he gets, taken down, controlled. And what else? I think I have Blachowicz more than 2 takedowns, but it's like that one I feel pretty uneasy about. It could be kind of like a push, or he gets knocked out early. He's given up a lot of skill on the feet. Don't get me wrong on that front. But I think that is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For producer Megan and Cody Saftic, I'm Paul Shaughnessy, saying goodbye and good luck.